On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. One-of-a-kind opinions, big-name guests, the teams you care about every day. It's the Ron Johnson Show, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Ron Johnson Show, and I'm your host, Ron Johnson, yet again with a hoarse voice for this week because my daughter had softball this past weekend, state championships. They got third in state, so, it is what it is. They are the best B team in the state of Minnesota. Why? Because the last two teams, in my opinion, should not be even in our league. They're from Wisconsin, River Falls and Menominee. So they got 1 and 2. We got third. So I'm just going to go, we're Minnesota State champs. They're Wisconsin champs. But today's show, as I bring Sam Ekstrom in, we're going to talk about NFL quarterbacks. Why? Because there's always talk about where Kirk Cousins falls in this top 10 versus top 15 versus top 20 conversation. You know where I stand. You know where Sam stands. We're also going to talk Twins in the Daily 3. We got the Daily 3 coming up, and then we're going to talk about linebackers. This new 3-4 defense, where does it put the Vikings linebacker group? Are they one of the best, or are they going to let injuries and lack of play move them down into a bottom tier? And before we jump into this episode, so we're going to talk quarterbacks, and I'm just going to let you know, Vikings fans, hold on, buckle up, because Kirk Cousins is in a position that you're going to want to find out about. But before we do that, I also want to let people know I did see an article from Michael Russo about Kirill Kaprizov. Sounds like he left Russia, and this is all speculation, because I got a tweet. And so I always want to follow up about the video. He thought that I was saying something that wasn't out there. Well, this is what's out there. He left and went through the Caribbean and then tried to enter the U.S. through somewhere else, and they said his work visa was not good. So I don't know if he has the military ID issue or not, but it sounds like from Michael Russo that he left, went through, tried to enter the U.S. through two different, ports overseas, like Caribbean islands and somewhere else. Did not work, had to go back to Russia. Now he's just in Russia waiting. So it doesn't sound like maybe Russia detained him. Maybe he just couldn't get into the U.S. because his visa is not correct, and he just signed a 5-year contract, and that is not good enough. So I guess they got to work on a work visa for him. But, that's the situation right now. So nothing about him being arrested or detained or whatever. So hopefully it's just a work visa issue and they can get this worked out pretty quick. But that is the follow-up on Kirill Kaprizov. But before we jump into the NFL quarterbacks conversation, we have a word from our sponsors.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Ron. Rock Auto is a wonderful resource for people like me who don't love spending time in the auto parts store and wandering the aisles. When you have your phone, you've got your laptop, you type in the address bar, rockauto.com, and boom, you've got options. Save time and money with rockauto.com. You can save 30%, 50%, brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, new carpet. They've got reliably low prices for every customer. A family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution to your auto parts needs. rockauto.com. And see all the parts available for your car or truck right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com.
Well, as we jump into today's segment, I'm going to let Sam take away the hot topic daily discussion of the day. Sam, tell me what's on your mind.
This has been a stretch of rankings. PFF's been ranking all the positions. ESPN is going position by position, ranking the top players. And today's the big one. Today, it's quarterbacks. So where does Kirk Cousins fall in this list? They ranked the top 10. And again, this is based on a poll that was given to executives, coaches, scouts, and players. So you've got everybody in NFL circles represented in this poll. And this is what they arrived at for a top 10. Rodgers, Mahomes, Allen, Brady, Burrow, Stafford, Herbert, Wilson, Watson, Prescott, and then a couple honorable mentions, people who got votes but didn't crack the top 10, Lamar Jackson, Derek Carr, and Kyler Murray. No Kirk Cousins. So Ron, having heard the list, having heard the top 10 and the 3 honorable mentions, what are your biggest gripes of that list? Who should Kirk Cousins knock off their perch?
Well, you know what? And this is where I'm gonna go with this. I still believe Kirk Cousins is better than Kyler Murray. I still believe Kirk Cousins personally. It depends on the offense. Um, like Wilson, like I know he's one. I'm struggling though because after seeing, I think he's better than I would put him over Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson right now, like right away. Like I just would do it for the simple fact of, in play-by-play situations, Kirk has never been taken care of. Like these guys, Watson, Prescott, Stafford, Herbert, Wilson, like Brady. These guys have always played in systems that cater to them, that love them. The coaches love them. The offense for the Vikings has always been an afterthought. Like literally has always been an afterthought. And that's been the problem. This has been a defensive-minded team. This has been a defensive-minded organization. A player close to the team, I'm not gonna say who. I was against to reach out and we talked a quick bit, just life stuff, whatever. And I just brought it up. And he's like, yeah, man, like I do believe that. I believe that the offense for the Vikings was an afterthought. Nothing wrong with it. He said Mike Zimmer was a great head coach. He said Mike Zimmer had a great defensive scheme, but the offense, they always felt like it was, don't screw this up. Like our defense can win us games, almost like the Baltimore Ravens back in 2000, when it was, Trent Dilfer throwing the ball 10 times a game sometimes, and the defense just went out there and controlled the game. That's what I think Mike Zimmer thought he had with that defense. And at times they were dominant. But when you get a guy like Kirk Cousins that can win you games, you got to flip the switch. You got to evolve or die. Look at the dinosaurs. You got to evolve or die. And I think that was the big thing was Mike Zimmer could never really evolve and become an offensive-minded like head coach. He could never really put the ball in his quarterback's hands and say, let's find a way to make this guy great. Defense, bend but don't break. You don't need to go out there and create turnovers. You don't need to go out there and be like this destroying factor. Just bend a little bit, and then let's force some field goals. It was always all like throw the sink at them. Let's make a big play. Let's try to hide this, disguise this, let's change this, let's do this. Like bend but don't break. Let's play cover two. Let's back up. Let's get up to the quarterback with the guys we know that can. Let's not get out of position and try to do too much. It was always a second thought. So I think that's why Kirk Cousins falls where he falls. Also, you said the guys that voted on this. You said NFL execs. We know how NFL execs feel about Kirk Cousins when it comes to these contracts and what he's done on the field. That's always been a dark cloud over Kirk Cousins' career is how much money he makes versus the wins, and especially the primetime wins. And that's where the execs, I think, like Kirk Cousins is not going to put on underwear and drink avocado tequila like Brady. He's not going to jump in a four-wheeler and get a Lamborghini like Josh Allen. Like, he's not that guy. Like, the guy drives a minivan and bought a new one and was posting it oh, yeah, okay, I got a new minivan now. Like, he's not going to do that. So, he's not going to buy flowers and surprise his wife, Sierra, at a photo shoot. Like Kirk Cousins is not in the front of the media like that. Like he's not doing this stuff. He's not wearing long hippie hair, playing a guitar with his movie star girlfriend. He's not doing a discount double check. There's a little bit to this. Lamar Jackson, one of the most polarizing figures out there. Derek Carr now has Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams said Carr is just as good as Aaron Rodgers when it comes to placing the ball. Kyler Murray is just Kyler Murray. He's effective with his legs and his arm. You look at Deshaun Watson. He can move. You look at Prescott. He can move. Burrow, legit. Jamar Chase, Tyler Higgins, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. You look at Stafford, won a Super Bowl. Herbert, he's the next up-and-coming young gun, and then Mahomes won a Super Bowl. So that's the one piece of all those guys that Kirk Cousins has not had, and I can respect that and say, you know what? If you're going to base it off primetime wins, big time, that kind of stuff, Monday Night Football, contract versus output, hey, you're there. But if we're talking pure skill and what a guy can get done with an offensive-minded coach, I got to put Kirk Cousins up there in at least the top 12. Like he's got to be honorable mention as well. Like that's where I would put him. He definitely deserves to be honorable mention in that. But the execs are always going to knock him down. I don't know. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, if we're going off of arm talent, I'm putting him over Lamar and Kyler. I think those guys definitely become unique with their legs, especially Lamar. Not quite as much Kyler, but the way that he can extend the play is still pretty special. I think the most interesting one to me is Stafford. Amazing what a Super Bowl does for a reputation. Because if you looked at this list 2 years ago, Stafford's 12 years into his Lions career. He hasn't won anything. The team's record is not good at all. Inconsistencies, injuries. I don't think anybody's putting Stafford in the top 10. Correct. And you get him in the right situation. They get through the playoffs. He puts together some clutch drives. He gets surrounded by a wonderful offensive-minded coach after having Matt Patricia for 3 years. And suddenly he's a top 6 quarterback. I mean, that to me is just a dramatic shift. And I think Kirk Cousins is right in that same spot. I think people look at his postseason track record. They look at some of the inconsistencies. They look at how long he's been doing it without a whole lot of team success. If he had 1 year like Stafford had with the Rams, I think Cousins jumps right up there with him. Right. I just think you need that one breakthrough where the individual accolades are great, but it marries up with what the team is doing, and they make that big run.
Right. So I would say this is the thought behind it. Kirk Cousins, he has to get it done this year. And I think you said it best. You said arm talent. That's what we're looking at. He's never going to be a runner. That's not his game. Brady wasn't either. Peyton Manning wasn't either. Not to say he's any of those guys, so that's not preposterous. I'm not saying he's Brady or Peyton, but his arm talent. He can throw the ball. Like, he can make the same throws, I feel like, that Derek Carr can make. I feel like he can make the same throws that if you're saying Russell Wilson can do, Kirk Cousins can do it for sure. I think the key is going to be, look at Zach Taylor. Look at Matt LaFleur. Look at all those guys. Look, what do they do? They're offensive-minded coaches. Sean McVay. Like that's what they do. Shanahan. They are considered offensive-minded gurus. That's the key there. That's the key. What do those guys have? Harbaugh. What do those guys have that Kirk Cousins doesn't? They had an offensive-minded coach. Now, he did have Jay Gruden, and he actually threw for 4,900 yards with Jay Gruden. Now, people can say it was garbage time, but either way, he threw for 4,900 yards. The man made the throws, so he can get it done. But that's the key is, what is this team going to look like? Can Kirk Cousins get it done in prime time? Because that's always going to be the knock. Money versus output. What is his output? How much money are they paying him? But that'll do it for the first segment of the Ron Johnson Show. Up next, we're going to talk about the linebackers. And where do the Minnesota Vikings fall in this? Are they getting respected, disrespected? Are they treating them like Kirk Cousins and Rodney Dangerfield? We'll find out next. Stay tuned. Up next on the Ron Johnson Show, we're going to talk about linebackers. PFF ranked the linebackers. Did the Minnesota Vikings get snubbed the same way Kirk Cousins did, as we brought up? This is the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast Network. As I bring in my producer, Sam Ekstrom. Sam, before we jump into this, because, again, you got a possible Anthony Barr coming back. We don't know yet. But Za'Darius Smith, Danielle Hunter, Jordan Hicks, Eric Kendricks. Eric Kendricks is a Pro Bowler. I think Danielle Hunter is a Pro Bowler. We know Za'Darius Smith can be a Pro Bowler. In 2019, those two guys led the league with QB pressures, 93, and I think 88. But before we jump into where they fall, because we know the NFL is biased. You know that. These rankings are biased because they don't know half the time. We have a word from our sponsors.
Let me tell you about Bet Online, your number one source for all betting needs and sports info, all the sports developments, league reviews. You had NHL playoffs there. You had NBA playoffs. Now you are jumping into MLB lines every single day. But they've also got special events like boxing, MMA, and golf as well. You can find podcasts, scores, and news, betonline.net. Head there today or use your mobile device, and you can learn about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Yeah, and so as we jump into this, Sam, let me know how many tiers are there? What's the first? How many are in the first and second, third tier? And then I'll tell you where I think they fall, and then we can go from there.
All right. Well, I'll start out with a disappointing development. PFF got lazy on this one. They had tiers for all the other positions. They didn't do tiers for the linebackers. They just got them all lumped in one big group. I guess it was too difficult. Now, I do need to stipulate, they are not including edge rushing outside linebackers. They included the Danielle Hunters and the Za'Darius Smiths. They put those in the defensive line rankings where the Vikings were 12th. Nonetheless, with Eric Kendricks and Jordan Hicks in the mix, this is where the Vikings fall. behind the 49ers, behind the Colts, behind the Saints, and behind the Packers, Minnesota is number 5. And here's what they say. In Eric Kendricks, the Vikings have had a superb all-around linebacker for years. Kendricks' grade did falter in 2021, a 59.9 mark that was down from 82.6 and 90.1. A new defensive coordinator and scheme will help him, though. The Vikings also brought in the underrated Jordan Hicks from the Cardinals in free agency. So they're leaning on Kendricks bouncing back a little bit. His run defense maybe was a little soft last year. And then Jordan Hicks, they're pretty fond of. What do you think of that ranking, number 5?
I think that's good. I mean, technically that would be tier 1 if they stuck with the tiers. So I'd say, I say the Vikings interior defensive line, interior linebackers are tier 1. I would say if you add za'darius Smith, the fact that those guys are tier 1 and the defensive line the edge rushers, I think would be tier 1. It's the middle that I think put that D line down to 12. So if you look at Danielle Hunter, za'darius Smith with Kendricks and Jordan Hicks, they're probably third. I think they do get the respect. So I do think that they got it right. Eric Kendricks, I think a little bit of his fall off was due to injury. Look at Danielle Hunter being out. Look at the pieces that were missing at times. Look at the inconsistency in some of the defensive calls when they had to keep moving guys around and changing pieces. But we know what he can be now, in more of a situation where he can decide when he goes, when he doesn't go. There's no more mugging the A gap as far as that's like the bread and butter. It's going to be, this is just what we do. If we're in the A gap, we're in the A gap because we're a 3-4 defense and we need another guy in that hole, which probably going to be Jordan Hicks most of the time. But I think they hit it. I think 5 for them, that's where they should be. Top 4 to 5. I definitely agree with that. And again, it's what have you done for me lately league, but I think there's going to be a resurgence year for Eric Kendricks to get back and become a Pro Bowler, and one of the top guys again, where everybody's like, man, this guy's all over the field because he's athletic. He's done that. And so we shall see what it looks like. And it's not too late to add, because in this defense, if you look at what's his name, Devondre Campbell with the Packers playing inside. Anthony Barr is similar. Like Anthony Barr can move inside next to Kendricks and Jordan Hicks every once in a while if they want to do some sub packages and then put him on the outside to rush the quarterback. They can move him around because then he can still go after the quarterback as the backer from the inside, like the Packers did with Devondre Campbell. So, and they're both Devondre's 6'5", so it's about the same type of player and size-wise, and Campbell just got a huge $50 million deal. So, but that's the difference is Barr has not been as consistent, and that's where I think he's going to have to figure out a way to get consistent if he wants to get another big contract. But again, he's not even here yet. But that's just my thought. But I think they can make that work. But that's where they should be. I don't know. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, so this is my takeaway. We finished all the PFF rankings now. They did all the positions, and they didn't do quarterback, but I guess that's because you don't really play your backup quarterbacks, so it turns into just ranking the starters, which they've already done. So the Green Bay Packers should win the Super Bowl, Ron. I mean, this is how PFF ranks the Packers at all the positions. At defensive line, Packers, number 3. At secondary, Packers, number 4. On the offensive line, running back, Packers, number 3. Offensive line, Packers, number 5. And then at linebacker, Packers, number 4. So, the only weakness the Packers have, according to PFF, you can probably guess it, wide receiver. They've got them 31st at wide receiver, and that's with Lazard, Watkins, and Cobb. But other than that, top 5 across the board. That Packers roster, at least in PFF's estimation, loaded, which is surprising considering how bad their cap situation was.
Yeah, I mean, but receiver, if you think about Aaron Rodgers, receiver is the big piece. So you can have the best of the best everywhere, but if you can't throw the ball, it doesn't matter. And I think that's the key. That's the good thing is the Vikings are kind of balanced everywhere. The fact that their quarterback is maybe, third tier in their mind or fourth tier, even whatever they want to call them, they can get this done. Like their defense is in a prime position. Harrison Smith is getting respect. The linebackers are getting respect. The D-line is probably one of the lower ones with the offensive line, I think, being 19th, right? That's what it was. Offensive line was 19th.
Yeah.
But, and that's like saying they don't know who's going to be the starting guard and what this team's going to look like under this new offense where it's a little bit more quarterback. You can help out your team by changing the play. Hey, I think this Vikings team is going to be right there with the Packers. But the Packers, again, they have to find, like, Christian Watson has to be able to be a guy. Like, they got to find somebody for Aaron Rodgers, because if not, we've seen Aaron Rodgers frustrated when guys are doing the wrong routes, dropping balls, not where he needs them to be when he needs them to be there. And they have to gel quick. And we know that he is sitting around drinking Merlot with his group. Like, he's at the end of his career. Like, he's not Tom Brady. Like, they don't have the same mindset. We didn't even know if Rodgers was going to play this year. Like, there was a time where everybody's like, this dude might retire and just be married. Like, that was kind of the thought. And so he's back. Not happy that Devontae Adams left, but he got a ton of money to come back and throw to nobody. So this should be an interesting year for the Packers, but the Vikings, I think they're right there with them. These rankings, they're fun, though. That's why they do them, is because we have to talk about them. But up next, we got the Daily 3. It's 3 questions, 3 minutes. Stay tuned. Now it's time for the part of the show that I love the most. I'm Ron Johnson. This is the Ron Johnson Show. You are listening to Locked On Sports, Minnesota's podcast network. And as Sam Ekstrom comes in, my producer, we're about to do the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. Take it away, Sam.
Ron, I've got a question for you. We talk about Vikings Packers all the time. We call it the border battle. We talk about Gophers Badgers, the border battle. Those are great rivalries. We don't talk a lot about Twins-Brewers because they're in different leagues. They rarely play. They are playing tonight, however, in an interleague series at Target Field. So I ask you, Ron, if the Twins and Brewers were in the same division like they should be, do you think we would view that rivalry the same way we do? Or probably not the same because it's NFL, but would it be close at least to Vikings-Packers type of rivalry and bad blood and border battle dramatics?
Yeah, I think there would be there. I mean, because it's the same as like the Yankees, the Yankees Red Sox. You look at Celtics Knicks, you got Yankees Red Sox. I think you would have created something there because you'd have the Gophers Badgers, you'd have the Packers Vikings, and then you have the Brewers Twins. The fact that they could see each other, they could knock each other down a peg when it comes to playoffs, when it comes to play-in games, all that kind of stuff. I think you would get a little bit more out of it. The Timberwolves, Bucks, same thing. They're in the East and the West, so you don't have that same intensity. You don't care unless they're gonna, unless they can year in and year out make it to the finals. You don't have that there either. Like, nobody cares about the Timberwolves Bucks. Nobody cares about the Timberwolves anybody. I don't think there's a rival yet for the Timberwolves. Like, there's not a game or a team that's like, oh, I can't wait to beat the Timberwolves. And so I think it's the same for the Twins-Brewers. It's a fun game because you got people that drive 3 hours, 4 hours to get here. They're all liquored up. They're going to be here for a couple of days or whatever. And they love to be in Minnesota because we see the Badgers fans travel well. The Packers fans travel well here to Minnesota, go to the Mall of America, do all the stuff. So I think the Twins-Brewers could have been a bigger thing if they were in the same, and they're both 48 wins right now. They both have 48 wins. So that's what makes it even cooler to see. They're both leading their division. So there could be a little bit put on this one, but no, it doesn't matter for them. It's an interleague game. They're just, trying to make sure they stay in front of their, they both want to get wins because they want to stay ahead of their guy, the Cardinals, and then they want to stay ahead of the Guardians. And so when you think about that with the Twins and the Brewers, yes, it could have been, but it's not.
Twins have a 4-game lead on the Guardians going into tonight's game. Big series against the Brewers. Ron, the Timberwolves won the play-in game this year, beat the Clippers, went to the playoffs to face the Grizzlies where they lost. The NBA is now voting to keep the play-in game permanent. I don't think they haven't made the vote yet, but all signs indicate that they are going to keep it as a permanent part of the playoff format. Would you keep it around permanently?
Yeah, I mean, look at the excitement it created. Like, not so much in the East and maybe the West just because we were watching it, but I think the West took the entire world by storm. And maybe just because of how they won and not how they won, but how they acted after they won. Because everybody was talking about Karl-Anthony Towns and his wife and Patrick Beverly and his Kobe antics and crying on the court with a robe on the next day with champagne. It took the world by storm, and social media for sure. So yeah, I could see them trying to create theatrics. I think the format for me is a little bit weird. I feel like I can't remember what we said, but we talked about that. Like 7 and 8 should have to play first, maybe, or something like that for 7, and then they drop down one. Or is that how it goes? Or
Yeah. So as it is now, 7 plays 8, and 9 plays 10.
Right.
And then the loser of 7-8 plays the winner of 9-10. We had it figured out, Ron. And now
I think we said 7 should play 10 and 8 should play 9, and then the winners from there play. Like make it like a 4, and then if 7 loses, though, they get to drop down and play in that, like just add more to it. But, I get it. They're trying to make it a one game, and then we're done. For both teams. I think the way they have it is cool because, if 7 gets knocked out by 10, then 7 is like, well, wait a minute, why don't we get to play 8 or 9? So I get that. Maybe like there's a loser's bracket and a winner's bracket. So 7 plays 10 and then 8 plays 9. Then the losers play to come back up and play 8. That could be another way to do it because that's just like AAU. So in softball as well, it does the same way. There becomes a loser's bracket. So there's not just one and done. If you're going to do a true play-in, make it maybe a multi-game series. So 7 plays 10. 8 plays 9. Winners wait. 7 probably solidifies its spot because you're 7. Losers play, and then they get to play whoever won 8, 9, and then that's set. So if 7 can win it, then you're good. If you lose, then you got to go back down and play in the other bracket. But yeah, no, I think there's something. And then same with 10 though. Like how does 10 fall? Then 10, if you win, then you're in the winners, and so then you have to play the winner of the 8, 9, or whatever, to figure out if you should stay ahead of a 7 and 8. I mean, it's a lot, but it could be done. I think there's a better way, but I don't mind it. It's more basketball. It's playoff basketball, so the intensity is up. And when it's a one-game elimination, it's really up, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, the Timberwolves better not be in that mix next year with the roster they have. I think they're shooting for a bye, or not a bye, but home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. That's got to be the goal. All right, last one. Ron, I know you're looking at tickets already to go to your next Wild game, October 15th. The Kings are coming to St. Paul. Kevin Fiala's return, the second game of the season. It's going to be a big one. I'm curious, Ron, what you think the reception will be for Fiala. Is it going to be polite applause, standing ovation? Is it going to be emotional? Is there going to be a video tribute for him? Will fans be bitter that he's gone? Will they boo him? What do you think the reception will be for Fiala?
Well, players leave and they leave. Like, I don't think they should boo him because it wasn't like he forced his way out of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Video tribute, I think that's a little bit too much. He didn't win a Stanley Cup for them or anything like that. I'd say standing ovation too seems like a bit much, but maybe you might get a polite applause, and then maybe some Fiala fans stand up, which then creates the like, okay, so should everybody stand up? Like it only takes one person to stand before it creates a standing ovation, because then that person is going to have a couple people around them. Then it becomes the ripple effect of, oh, should we all be standing right now for Fiala? I think just a polite applause. I think some players are going to, handshake them maybe, and go out there and knuckle up and, whatever, slap sticks. But after that, it's the second game of the season. He didn't do anything like, heroic for the Wild. So I don't see it being too much, but you never know, man. Minnesota's a nice state, period. They always love to like thank people and, and be nice to everybody. So I could see them maybe trying to put some little video thing together, but I don't see why. Like, it's like, and it's Bill Guerin. It's not like a guy that's had Fiala, all of his career here. So I could see it just being a basic little applause from the fans.
Yeah, I think if Guerin was in charge of the like in-game production stuff, I don't think they would ever do any of the cheesy, heartfelt reunion. I think the Wild have been known to kind of layer it on pretty thick when former players come back, so we might have a little video tribute action, a little wave to the fans from Fiala. But again, they didn't win much when he was here, and the Wild have another player that they're even more excited about in Kaprizov, who hopefully is on the ice October 15th as well.
Yeah, well, that'll do it for the Ron Johnson Show today on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. We thank you guys for subscribing, watching, listening, downloading, and taking us wherever you go. Please make sure you continue to share it as well. Tell your friends. Tell a friend, tweet a friend. But that'll do it for us today. Have a great day.